Old man, don't you dare come here. I don't need you. Just go die alone of old age. That was the message I received from my son right on the night of December 22nd. It was cruel and cutting, like a bucket of ice water thrown in the face of this old father who was busy packing simple gifts from the farm to go visit his boy in the city. The neighbors passing by saw me stunned and said, "Oh, just let it go. Kids grow up and they get ungrateful. That's just how it is." But I didn't believe it for a second. The son who cried uncontrollably when I cut my hand, the son who swore in front of his mother's grave that he'd smoke a whole hog bibelk for me this year, he couldn't have written those hateful words. Something was wrong. The scent of death was coming off that phone. And if I had gotten offended that night and gone to sleep, the only thing that would have greeted me the next morning would have been the cold body of my son, chained up in his own wife's family's detached garage. Let me tell you what really happened before that fateful moment. Just hours before the phone screen lit up with those cruel words, I was the happiest man in this part of South Texas. The winter wind was whistling through the old wood cracks of the ranch house, but in the kitchen, my heart was warm as if I was sitting right by the fireplace. I was shining my old tough leather boots, my wartime boots that I only wore for the most important occasions. On the table, I had already arranged the gifts, simple but full of life. There was a bottle of aged rye whiskey I had personally barreled for 5 years, a jar of homemade peach preserves made by my own hands, and a wool scarf that I clumsily knitted for my daughter-in-law, even though I knew she never liked these cheap things. 6 months ago, Marcus, my son, came to visit the house. He threw his arms around my shoulders, his eyes shining with pride, and firmly promised, "Pops, you have to come up to the city this Christmas. I'm going to smoke the best whole hog BBQ in the world for you. We're going to get the biggest Christmas tree on the block." That promise was what kept me alive for half a year. Marcus is a man of his word. He's worth his weight in gold. He's never let me down, not even on the smallest thing. And then the phone vibrated, and that message appeared. I read it 10 times. "Old man, I don't need you." No, Marcus would never call me old man like that, so cold and disrespectful. He always called me Pops, Boss, or Old Man in that teasing, loving way. And more importantly, Marcus hated typing without proper grammar. He was meticulous about every letter. This message was cold, mechanical, like it was written by a stranger trying to shoo away an old stray dog. I called immediately. Voicemail. The second time, voicemail. My heart started pounding, not from anger, but from fear. I called Serena, my daughter-in-law. It rang a long time. Finally, she answered. "Hello, Pops, is that you?" Serena's voice sounded off. It was trembling, breathless, as if someone was pointing a knife at her back. "Serena, where is Marcus? Why did he send me a message telling me not to come?" "I'm getting ready to head to the bus station," I asked quickly, trying to stay calm. He's sleeping." "Oh no, we're at the airport. We're going to Miami, Florida, urgently." "Pops, it's really loud. Don't come, please. Marcus is exhausted. He doesn't want to talk." She was lying. I knew she was lying. Behind her, I couldn't hear the airport announcements or the noise of tourists. Instead, I heard music blasting. The loud bass of gangster rap. That music that glorifies criminals, and that Marcus hated and absolutely forbade in his house. And between the music, I heard the harsh, wild laughter of a man. "Hang up. Tell that old man to leave. You! She abruptly hung up on me. I stood petrified in the middle of the kitchen, gripping the phone until my knuckles turned white. The blood rushed hot to my head. A normal father might shrug it off. He would think his kids changed plans last minute and sadly put away his luggage. But I am not a normal father. I am a man who has lived his whole life on this tough land. I smell danger in the air as clearly as the smell of gunpowder. Going on vacation, exhausted, I muttered, staring into nothingness. No, my son, I know where you are, and I know you didn't go on vacation. I grabbed my old travel bag and took out some warm clothes. In their place, I went to the drawer and pulled out my old oak-handled folding knife, my inseparable companion since my days as a logger. The sharp blade shone under the yellowish light. I slipped it deep into the inner pocket of my thick jacket, right against my chest. That night, I left my house, leaving the false peace behind. I wasn't going to have Christmas dinner. I was going to find my son, because my instinct, my spirit, told me he was in mortal danger. Before I continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you are listening from in the comments below. I sat hunched in the last seat of the beat-up coach bus heading north to Atlanta. Outside the window, the night was black as ink, occasionally torn by the headlights sweeping across the dry trees lining the road. The wind howled, bringing the sharp cold from the mountains. But the cold outside was nothing compared to the storm raging inside me. They say that as you age, your senses dull. Your vision clouds, your hearing fails, your hands grow slow. But there is one thing that never ages. On the contrary, it gets sharper with the years. A father's instinct. We call it a gut feeling. It's like when an old wolf smells a storm before the black clouds arrive, or like the horse that trembles before the earth moves. And tonight, that gut feeling was screaming in my head. Marcus is in danger. Run, Elijah. Run! I clutched the worn bag tight in my lap. Inside, the bottle of whiskey clinked against the jar of preserves. I reached inside to touch the inner pocket of my thick jacket. My fingers touched the cold, rough surface of the knife handle. It was the knife I had used for 40 years, from being a young timberman to becoming a lonely old man on the ranch. The blade was worn, but still sharp as a razor, sharp enough to cut rope, peel fruit, and if necessary, sharp enough to protect my family from the wild beasts. I remembered the image of Marcus when he was 7 years old. That day there was a heavy storm, and our heifer was lost on the ridge. I was going to leave it, but Marcus cried stubbornly, insisting on going to find her, because she was the cow he loved the most. Father and son, we walked through the rain and wind all night. When we found the heifer trapped in a ravine, Marcus jumped in, using his small hands to try to lift her. The child was covered in mud, shivering from the cold, but his gaze held a strange determination. He was just like his mother, the most noble, yet bravest woman I have ever known. "Pops, I will never abandon our family," Marcus said as we led the heifer back to the corral. A child like that, a man raised with that kind of upbringing, couldn't send a message telling his father to run off like a beggar. Hell no, it couldn't be. "Hey boss, why the worried face? Going to visit family for the holidays with a face like you're attending a funeral?" The bus driver yelled back at me through the rearview mirror. He was Marcus's age and chewed gum noisily. I flinched, trying to force a crooked smile. "Ah, yes, my son told me he had a surprise. I'm just nervous to know what it is, that's all. I bet it's good news. These young folks in the city make good money now. He's probably getting you a car or a trip." He laughed loudly. I remained silent, looking out the window. "A trip, sure. The message said they were going to Miami. But why the secrecy? Why was my daughter-in-law's voice trembling like that? And the music. That music kept obsessing me. I closed my eyes, praying in silence to the Lord. Please, Lord, protect my boy. If he is all right, I offer the rest of my life in penance. But if anyone dares to touch a hair on his head, forgive me for what I am about to do. The bus plunged into the night, carrying an old father and a fear that grew every second, turning into a heavy stone crushing my chest. I arrived in the city as it was getting dark on December 23rd. Atlanta was shining with lights. Giant Christmas trees twinkled in the squares. Church bells chimed, announcing a season of peace. But all of that only made me feel more lost and alone. I took an old cab to the suburbs, where Marcus had bought a very decent 2-story house 3 years ago. It was the greatest pride of his life. He worked like a dog, overtime, day and night, at the logistics company to own that home. "We're here, boss. Nice neighborhood," the cab driver said, slowing down. I looked outside. Yes, this was Marcus's neighborhood. The surrounding houses were luxuriously decorated. The neighbor's house on the left was covered in LED reindeer lights. The widow's house on the right had a giant inflatable Santa waving. But my son's house was different. It was completely dark. No twinkling lights, no wreath on the door. The cream-colored 2-story house stood imposing, cold, and set apart from the surrounding cheer. The blinds on the first and second floors were tightly shut, as if their owners wanted to hide every secret inside. But what gave me chills wasn't the darkness. It was what was parked in the yard. Marcus's front driveway, where he usually parked his immaculate silver sedan, was now invaded by 3 huge, pitch-black pickup trucks with dark-tinted windows. You couldn't see anything inside. The bodywork was stained with red clay, the kind of mud you only find on the dirt backroads, where smugglers move shipments. They were parked carelessly, crushing the green grass that Marcus tended every weekend. And then I heard it. When I got out of the cab, paid the man, and stood in front of the iron gate, the music was blaring from inside the house. It wasn't Silent Night, it wasn't Jingle Bells. It was blaring horns, an accelerated bass line, and the nasal voice of gangster rap. I crossed the border with the white packages, my pistol on my hip, and my pockets full of green. Step to me, and you get led. The lyrics, full of violence and swagger, hit my ears like slaps. Marcus hated that music. He had told me, "Pops, that music is poison. It celebrates evil. Songs that praise criminals will never be played in my house." Yet now, his own house vibrated with that dirty sound. I stood frozen in front of the gate. The cold wind hit my face, but a cold sweat ran down the back of my neck. The unease from earlier had turned into absolute certainty. This wasn't a quick trip. This was an invasion. I stepped closer, trying to peer through a tiny gap between the 2 living room blinds. The yellowish light from inside filtered out. I squinted, my heart racing. The scene inside made my blood run cold and then boil with rage. In the living room, sprawled on the brown leather sectional that Marcus guarded like gold, sat his in-laws. His father-in-law, Bernard Monroe, red-faced, was tilting back my son's expensive whiskey bottle, drinking straight from the neck. His mother-in-law, a heavy-set woman with a face full of makeup, laughed loudly with a long cigarette in her hand, dropping ashes onto the white wool rug. But the one who caught my attention the most wasn't them. It was an unfamiliar guy sitting with his feet propped up on the coffee table. He looked about 30, shaved head, with a gold chain around his neck, as thick as a dog's choke chain. He wore a tank top, showing a tattoo of a black scorpion crawling from his bicep up to his neck. He was using Marcus's fruit knife to clean his fingernails while laughing and saying something that made the whole in-law family cheer. I recognized him, even though I had never seen him in person. I had seen his picture once when Marcus sighed and showed it to me. Blink. Although he had both his eyes, the nickname referred to his defective soul. He was Serena's brother, the one Marcus had said, "He's a disaster. He runs with that criminal life. I've forbidden him from setting foot in this house." So what was he doing here? Why was his wife's family throwing a party in my son's house when they weren't home? And most importantly, where was Marcus? An old wolf never walks into a trap without knowing the enemy. I took a step back, hiding in the shadow of the old oak tree by the gate. I needed to confirm. I needed to see my daughter-in-law. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. I adjusted my collar, straightened the edge of the jacket that concealed the knife, and stepped out of the shadows. I rang the doorbell. Ding dong. The bell rang clearly, but it seemed swallowed by the noise of the music inside. I rang again, this time holding my finger down longer. Inside, the music suddenly cut off. I heard hurried steps and murmurs. "Who is it?" I said we weren't taking visitors, the man's husky voice echoed. "Let me check. It's probably the pizza." A woman's voice was heard. It was Serena. The heavy wooden door cracked open. Serena appeared. She was wearing a thin silk nightgown with a sweater hastily pulled over it. Her face was heavily made up, but it couldn't hide how drawn she looked and the deep bags under her eyes. When she saw me standing there, carrying my bag of gifts from the ranch, the color drained from her face. She froze like a statue, clutching the edge of the door tightly. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. "Pops," she whispered so faintly that the wind almost carried the word away. I looked directly into my daughter-in-law's eyes, looking for a bit of warmth, a bit of welcome. But there was nothing, only pure terror. "Hello, Serena, my child," I said in a low voice, trying to sound calm. "I made it." She didn't answer. I got worried and grabbed my bag. I tried to step forward, but Serena quickly backed up, blocking the way with her other hand on the door. "Pops, why did you come? I already sent you a message. We are at the airport." "Oh no. We canceled the flight, but Marcus is sleeping. He's very tired." The clumsy, disjointed lies tumbled from her mouth. The airport. Sleeping. She didn't even dare look me in the eye. "Serena," I cut her off with a cold stare. "You say Marcus is sleeping? Then what is that music? And whose are those trucks outside? Why are your parents and your brother in the house if your husband is sick?" Serena jumped and looked back fearfully. Just then, Blink stepped into the hallway. He had a beer in his hand, his face flushed with alcohol. He looked me up and down with contempt and grinned mockingly, showing smoke-stained teeth. "Who is it, sis?" "Oh, the old rancher." He swaggered forward and stood imposing right behind Serena, reeking of alcohol in my face. "Hey, Grandpa, wrong house. Nobody's selling farm fresh goods here. Beat it." I clenched my fist. Rage ignited in my chest like fire. "I came to see my son. Get out of the way." "Your son doesn't want to see you. He's sick of your smell of cow manure." Blink roared with laughter and then turned to yell at Serena. "What are you doing? Close the door. Run him off or I won't be responsible for what happens." Serena was shaking. I clearly saw on her wrist, where her sweater sleeve had ridden up a little, bruises, finger marks from a hard squeeze. Pops, please go, Serena said, her eyes filling with tears. She looked at me pleadingly. Please go. Marcus is fine. Tomorrow I'll tell him to call you. Go. Serena, where is my son? I roared, trying to push the door open to enter, but Serena was faster. Forgive me, Pops. Slam. The door closed abruptly in my face. I heard the hurried click of the deadbolt. I stood there, alone, in the middle of the freezing night. Inside, Blink's laugh returned, accompanied by the gangster rap at full volume, as if to drown out my knocking on the door and mock an old man's helplessness. Did they think a wooden door would stop me? Did they think I was going back to the bus station crying? They were dead wrong. I backed up a few steps. I looked up at the second-story window. Marcus and his wife's bedroom, all dark, with no signs of life. I bent down, pretending to pick up my bag, and walked toward the gate, as if I had given up. I walked until I was lost behind the oak trees, waiting until I was sure no one was looking out the window. Then I tossed the heavy bag into the bushes. I kept only the knife in my pocket. I pulled my hood up to cover my head, and sticking to the shadow of the stone wall, I circled the house toward the back. If they won't let me in nicely, I'll go in the hard way, and I won't be ringing the doorbell again. The backyard of Marcus's house used to be the most peaceful place in the world. I remember that every time I visited, we would prune the roses together and care for the green lawn. Marcus loved this garden. He said it was the only place he felt he could breathe in the noisy city. But tonight, this garden looked like a desolate battlefield. I hopped the low wooden fence in the corner. My knees ached from old age arthritis, but I held back from making a sound. The waning moon faintly illuminated the scene in front of me, and my heart twisted. Marcus's beautiful roses had been mercilessly trampled. The green grass was now full of deep tire tracks, the earth plowed up, all turned into a mud pit. Clearly, those trucks had come back here, not to enjoy the scenery, but to load something very heavy. I held my breath, moving softly like an old cat among the bushes. The night wind here blew stronger, bringing the smell of dampness, the strong smell of gasoline, and the metallic smell of blood. I pressed against the wall of the house, moving toward the old shed in the corner of the yard. Marcus built that shed himself to store the mower and various tools. It was made of cheap pine wood, simple and a little crooked. Marcus joked, "This shack would fall down with one kick, Pops." But as I approached, I noticed a strange change. The rotting wooden door of the shed was now reinforced with 2 iron crossbars, and on the formerly loose latch, a new padlock, big as a fist, hung gleaming under the moon. Why lock up a small room that holds shovels and picks with such an expensive lock? My gut feeling screamed louder than ever. My trembling hands touched the cold wood. I pressed my ear to the crack between the pine boards. Total silence inside. Am I wrong? I wondered, sweating profusely even though it was cold. Are they hiding contraband here? I was about to leave to find another way into the main house, but just then something rang out. Clink, clink. It was metal hitting, the sound of chains. It came from inside. It sounded heavy and tired. I froze. A moan followed, not of a wounded animal. It was the moan of a person. A suppressed, weak, gasping moan, as if coming from the chest of someone agonizing, without strength. Ah, water. The whisper came out so faint that if my ear hadn't been pressed against the wood, I would have thought it was the wind. But I recognized that voice, even though it was hoarse, distorted by pain. I recognized it. It was the voice that had called me Pops for 30 years. Marcus, I whispered, with a broken voice, my lips pressed to the wood. Marcus? Is that you? My son? The moan inside stopped. The silence lasted 3 seconds. But for me, it was a century. Then a sound responded. A soft knock on the wood. Tap, tap, and then a sob. The cry of a child finding his mother. The cry of despair finding hope. Pops, Daddy. My world collapsed. My son hadn't gone to Miami. He wasn't sleeping in a warm bed. He was here, in this filthy, freezing shed, meters away from his own house, where the invaders ate and drank their fill. Tears welled up in my old, hot eyes, but they dried immediately, replaced by something much more terrifying. Fury. I backed up, looking at the enormous padlock that imprisoned my son. I touched my pocket, gripping the oak handle. Tonight there would be no silent night. Tonight Blink was going to have to face a father. I stood in front of the shed door, trembling, not from the bone-deep cold, but from the gasping sound coming from inside. My son's voice, the cry for help of a trapped animal. I had to get in now, but that gleaming padlock stared at me mockingly, like the eye of the devil. I touched the knife in my pocket. No, this is for cutting rope or self-defense. It can't open a reinforced steel lock. I looked around in the gloom of the moon. In this corner of the yard, Marcus always left junk lying around. There it was. Under the dense rose bushes, I saw an old, rusted iron bar, maybe part of a broken clothesline. It was about 18 inches long with a flat tip. I grabbed it, feeling the cold metal in my calloused hand. I returned to the door. I didn't try to break the lock. It was too tough. Instead, I aimed for the latch. Marcus made this shed with cheap wood, and after several rains, it was already half rotted. I slid the tip of the bar between the metal latch and the wooden door. I took a deep breath, concentrating all the strength of a man who carried timber his whole life into my right arm. "Open up, or I'll tear you to pieces, you bastard!" I hissed through gritted teeth. Crack! The dry wood splintered. The latch flew off, taking a piece of rotten wood with it. The door creaked open, groaning on its unoiled hinges. I held my breath. The noise might have alerted the people in the house. I looked toward the main house. The gangster rap was still booming. The laughter continued. Maybe God used those dirty sounds to cover me. I slipped inside the shed and closed the door behind me. The darkness inside was thick, heavy. But what hit me first wasn't the darkness, it was the smell. A horrible mixture that churned my stomach. The smell of rotten wood, the strong smell of old urine, and hidden in there, the metallic smell of dried blood and cheap antiseptic. Trembling, I took out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The cold, white light swept the small, messy room. Broken bags of fertilizer, old mowers lying around. And then the light stopped on the corner where the shed's main support post was. My heart stopped. Marcus, my tall, strong son, the pride of our name, was lying there, huddled on the cold, dirty ground. He was only wearing torn shorts, his skin purple with cold. His hands were tied behind his back to the post with rough rope. But the worst part was his right leg. A heavy iron chain, the kind they use for junkyard dogs, was squeezing his right ankle, the other end hooked to a bolt driven into the concrete. The ankle was swollen twice, its size, black and purple. His shin was twisted at a grotesque, unnatural angle. They had broken his leg and left him like that, without a splint, without a bandage, just with dried blood stuck to his skin. Marcus! The name escaped my throat. Broken. That huddled figure jumped. He raised his head, squinting at the light. His face was emaciated, his beard grown out, one eye swollen shut, his lips cracked and white. When he recognized me, his good eye opened wide, filled with terror instead of joy. "Pops," he whispered in a raspy voice, like wind in a chimney. "Turn it off. Turn off the light, Pops. Run." I ignored him. I lunged to his side, falling to my knees on the cold dirt. I hugged his beaten face, my hot tears falling onto his cheeks. "My God, my son. What did they do to you?" "My son? Who did this?" Marcus trembled in my arms, not from cold, but from fear. He tried to push me away with his weak strength. "You can't be here. Blink has a gun. He's going to kill you. Go, Pops." "I'm not going anywhere," I said firmly, taking off my thick jacket to cover him. "I'm right here. Nobody is going to kill anybody. I'm taking you out of this hell." I touched his broken leg. Marcus let out a groan of pain, shrinking away. The rage exploded in me, burning away all fear. I looked at the chain, then at my son's broken face. This isn't domestic violence. This is torture. This is the work of devils. And tonight, that devil is going to pay. "Pops, forgive me," Marcus cried, the tears mixing with the grime on his face. He leaned his head on my shoulder, weak like a small child. I promised to smoke meat for you. And look at me, lying here like a dog. Don't talk anymore, son." I stroked his head, feeling the bumps on his skull. "Tell me, why? Why did your wife's family do this? Where is Serena?" At the mention of Serena, Marcus stiffened. A different pain, deeper than the physical, appeared in his eyes. "Serena," he whispered bitterly. "She knows. She watched it all, Pops. She saw them beat me." I froze. Serena, the daughter-in-law, who always called me daddy, sweet father-in-law, the girl I thought was good. Marcus breathed heavily and began to tell the story, every word a stab in my heart. "Last week, I went down to the warehouse to check the trucks. You know, my logistics company. Lately there have been night runs. I thought it was strange to see Blink lurking around. He doesn't work for me." Marcus swallowed. His throat was dry. I quickly opened my water bottle, giving him small sips. I snuck into the back storage without being seen. I saw my father-in-law, Bernard, and Blink removing the spare tires from the trucks. Inside was full of white bricks, pops, crystal meth, pounds, and pounds of it. "Holy Mother," I whispered, making the sign of the cross. I yelled at them. I told them I was going to call the police. I reached for my phone. Marcus's voice broke. But I didn't expect Bernard, my father-in-law, to hit me with a pipe wrench from behind. I blacked out. I clenched my teeth, closing my fist. The father-in-law hitting his son-in-law to protect the drugs. This world is crazy. When I woke up, I was already chained here. Blink was in front of me with a baseball bat. Marcus looked at his leg shivering. He was laughing. He told me, "You like calling the police? I'm going to teach you to walk carefully." And then he shattered my leg. Pops, it hurt so bad. I passed out and woke up again from the pain. "Damn sons of a..." I cursed, crying with rage. They took my phone. They forced me to unlock it. Blink was the one who sent you the message. He said if I didn't give him the password, he'd kill Serena. He threatened to kill you. And Marcus looked at me with swollen eyes. I was so scared, Pops. Scared they'd hurt you. That's why I gave them the key. And Serena, what did she do? She cried. She begged her father, but he slapped her. He told her, Do you want to live well? Or do you want the whole family to go to jail? And she shut up. She chose her family, Pops. She left me lying here. A chill ran down my spine. The betrayal. That poison kills faster than bullets. They didn't just break my son's leg. They broke his trust and his heart. What do they want from you? Why don't they just kill you? I asked, though I feared the answer. Marcus looked at me with darkness. If they kill me, the police investigate. The company is in my name. They need the company to launder money, to move the cargo. They need me alive, but alive like a zombie. He pointed to the dark corner of the shed where there was a small wooden table. Look, Pops, look what they're going to do to me tonight. I shined the light over there, and what I saw made my blood run cold. On the rotten table, next to an empty bottle, was a shiny metal tray. Inside there was a small baggie of white powder, a metal spoon, burnt on the bottom, a lighter, and a new medical syringe in its packaging. A kit for injecting drugs. I stared at those things. Dizzy, I'm a rancher. I don't know much about this stuff, but I understand what they are for. They plan to, I stammered. They are going to inject me, Pops, Marcus said desperately. Blink said that since it's Christmas Eve, he's going to give me a present. He wants to make me an addict. He wants to turn me into an animal who begs him for drugs at his feet. Marcus's tears flowed again. Pops, if I get addicted, my word means nothing to the law. The police will see me as a paranoid junkie accusing his decent in-laws. They'll control me with the drug. I'll lose everything. The company, my honor, my life. I looked at my son, an engineer, a healthy, intelligent man, on the verge of being turned into a slave to that poison. The plan wasn't just cruel. It was perfect in a terrifying way. Killing someone requires hiding the body, but killing someone's soul allows them to keep using the body to make money. No, I said, my voice cold and hard. I stood up, turning to look at my son. There will be no injection. No one is going to turn you into an addict. You don't understand. Blink is coming back. He said he was finishing his bottle and coming to check on me. You have to leave now. Click. A noise at the shed door cut Marcus off. Both of us flinched. The latch outside rattled. Heavy footsteps on the dry grass and the drunken humming of someone. Merry Christmas to my dear brother-in-law. It was Blink's voice. He was coming. I looked at Marcus's chain. No time to break it. I searched for a weapon. The rusted bar, check, and the knife in my pocket. Pops, hide, Marcus whispered in a panic. Behind those sacks, quick! I looked at my son, and then at the door that was vibrating. I knew I couldn't hide. If I hid, he would inject Marcus in front of my eyes. Hell no, I wasn't going to allow that. I turned off the flashlight and put it away. I backed up, pressing myself into the darkness right behind the door, my right hand squeezing the bar, my left hand on the knife. My heart was beating so hard that I feared he would hear it. I'm a 70-year-old man with arthritis and failing eyesight. He's a 30-year-old bull, brutal and armed. An unfair fight, but I had two things he didn't: surprise and the instinct of an old, cornered wolf defending his cub. The door burst open. The moonlight entered, drawing the shadow of a strong man on the floor. The smell of alcohol hit immediately. The bloody confrontation began. Blink stumbled into the shed, a half-empty bottle in his right hand, a black pistol in his left. He didn't turn on the light, maybe because he was overconfident or because he liked to enjoy his victim's fear in the dark. He was swaying, walking with a drunkard's clumsy steps. "All right, brother-in-law," he slurred mockingly. "I brought you your medicine. Ready to fly high?" He advanced toward Marcus. My son shrank back, looking at the gun. "No, please, Blink," Marcus pleaded, trying to buy time. "Don't call me Blink. Call me Boss." He laughed, raising the bottle for another drink. In that moment, when he threw his head back, exposing his throat and lowering his guard, I stepped out of the shadow behind the door. I didn't yell. Sly old men don't yell when they attack. I put all my weight and my hatred into the rusted bar. Whack! The bar hit his armed wrist sharply. A dry crunch sounded. He screamed in pain. The pistol flew from his hand, sliding across the cement into the darkness. "What the hell?" He spun around, his eyes wide with surprise. He saw me, an old man with white hair, eyes of fire, a bar in my hand. "You!" I didn't give him time. I threw the second blow at his knee, but Blink, though drunk, knew how to fight in the street. He reflexively backed away. The bar only grazed his thigh. He roared, throwing the bottle at my face. I ducked. The bottle shattered against the post, glass flying. Taking advantage of my movement, he charged at me like a bull. The shove sent me crashing against the sacks. My chest hurt as if I'd been hit by a sledgehammer. The bar fell from my hand. "You old..." Blink howled, swinging a punch at my face. It connected with my cheekbone. I saw stars, the taste of blood in my mouth. He threw himself on top of me, hands on my neck, thick, rough fingers squeezing my throat. I couldn't breathe. My vision was darkening. "Pops! No!" Marcus screamed, uselessly pulling at the chain. I saw Blink's deformed face close to mine. He was laughing. The devil's smile. He thought he had already won. He thought youth would crush old age. But he forgot something. I'm a rancher. I've dealt with bulls and logs all my life, and I had an ace up my sleeve. My right hand searched in my pocket. My fingers touched the oak handle. Click. The knife flipped open. I didn't stab wildly. I remembered how I used to kill chickens, how I bled wild boars. I needed a weak point. With my last ounces of strength, I plunged the knife into his thigh, right in the groin where the artery runs. Blink let out a terrifying shriek that broke the night. He released my neck, grabbing his leg. Blood started spurting out, hot, soaking me all over. I pushed him off. I rolled to the side, coughing, grasping for air. He tried to stand up, pale, eyes wide. He was searching for the gun, the heat. "Where is it?" he whimpered. I saw the gun, too. It was 3 feet from Marcus. "Marcus, the gun!" I yelled. Marcus, despite the pain, stretched out and grabbed the weapon with his tied hands. He aimed it at Blink, trembling. "Stop! Stop, you bastard!" Marcus yelled. Blink froze. He saw the black barrel, then his bleeding wound. His swagger left him, leaving only pure fear. "Coward! No, don't shoot, brother-in-law. It was a joke," he stammered, raising his hands. I got up with difficulty, grabbed the bar, approached him, and hit him hard on the back of the neck. Thud. Blink's eyes rolled back, and he fell like a sack of potatoes. Unconscious. I stood there repenting. Everything hurt. I was covered in someone else's blood. But I felt no disgust. I felt satisfaction. "That's enough," I told Marcus. "Let's go, son." I didn't have time to rest. Blink's scream surely alerted the people in the house. The gangster rap cut off. I heard yells from the house. "What happened, Blink?" Bernard's voice boomed. I cursed. I checked Blink's pockets. Keys. Thank God. A keychain with the Ford logo. It was for one of the trucks. I returned to Marcus. The problem was the chain. I didn't have the key to the padlock. Pops, how am I going to leave? I'm chained up. Marcus looked at his ankle desperately. I looked at the eye bolt in the concrete. It was firm, but the chain was attached to the eye bolt with a U-shackle and a screw. Hand me that pipe wrench over there. I pointed. Marcus dragged himself over to the rusted wrench. I turned the nut. It was stiff from rust. Hurry, Pops. They're coming, Marcus urged, looking at the door. I gritted my teeth, using all my strength. My hand peeled and bled, and the nut finally gave a little. I kept going. It finally loosened. I removed the shackle. The chain was free from the floor, but it was still on Marcus's ankle. No choice. We're leaving like this. Let's go. I helped Marcus stand up. He groaned when his broken leg touched the ground. Lean on me, just tough it out, I ordered. We stumbled out of the shed like drunks. As we stepped into the yard, a powerful light from the back porch blinded us. Freeze right there, Bernard yelled. He was in the back door with a double-barreled shotgun. Beside him, the mother-in-law and Serena covered their mouths. Kill him, old man! He killed my brother! The mother-in-law shrieked. Pops! No! Serena weakly screamed. Bang! The shot hit the dirt at my feet, splattering mud. The old man was shooting to kill. He was willing to murder his son-in-law to silence him. Run! I yelled, pulling Marcus toward the side fence. Shortcut to the front. We tumbled through the bushes, clothes tearing. Another shot broke branches above us. We reached the front. The 3 trucks were still there. I hit the key fob button. The one in the middle flashed its lights. Get in the F-150! I pushed Marcus into the passenger seat, shoving his broken leg in without delicacy because there was no time. I jumped behind the wheel, slamming the door shut. Bernard had already rounded the corner, aiming at the windshield. Get out, or I'll blow your heads off, he yelled, red as a fighting rooster. I looked him in the eye through the glass. I put the key in. I turned it. The V8 engine roared like a beast. Let's see if your shotgun is faster than my truck, I muttered. I slammed it into gear. I floored the accelerator. The truck jumped straight toward him. The old man leaped out of the way, startled, falling to the ground. The shotgun flew. The truck rammed the iron gate. Sound of metal crashing. Boom. A tremendous sound. The gate flew into the street. I spun the wheel to the left, tires screeching on the cold asphalt. We launched into the darkness, leaving behind the house of hell, the screams, and the betrayal. I looked at Marcus. He was panting, pale, sweating cold, clutching his broken leg with the chain still dangling. We made it, Pops. We got away? He asked, trembling. I checked the rearview mirror. No one was following us. Maybe they were busy with the bleeding blink. Not yet, son, I said, my eyes glued to the dark road. The war is just beginning, but tonight we won. I squeezed my son's cold hand, the father's calloused hand, and the son's trembling hand. The black Ford F-150 I stole sped like a possessed beast down the deserted highway. The V8 engine roared, devouring every foot of cold asphalt under the headlights that cut through the night. I didn't dare slow down, not even a little. In the rearview mirror, the darkness seemed to want to jump out and swallow us both. I expected to see pursuit lights, sirens, or hear gunfire, but behind us, there was only a deathly silence. In the passenger seat, Marcus was fading. His broken leg was propped up on the dashboard. The iron chain, still tight around his swollen purple ankle, vibrated with every bump in the truck. The blood from his open wounds was already starting to dry, sticking to the expensive leather upholstery. Marcus, my son, don't go to sleep. Talk to me, I yelled, gripping the steering wheel with my right hand and slapping his cheek with my left. Marcus half opened his eyes, his gaze lost, gone from the pain and the shock. "Pops, I'm cold. I'm so sleepy." "Don't you dare fall asleep, you bastard. If you fall asleep, you die." I screamed at him, tears welling up. I knew the symptoms. Traumatic shock. He was losing blood, and the pain was more than any human could endure. If he passed out now, his heart could stop. I turned the heater up to maximum, but the cold radiating from his body seemed impossible to warm. "Listen to me," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Do you remember when you were little? That time you climbed the peach tree and broke your arm? You cried all day, but the next day you wanted to climb it again. You're the most stubborn kid on the ranch. Hold on, son." Marcus smiled faintly, a crooked grin on his battered face. "That time you spanked me because I ripped my new shirt. Yes, this time I won't hit you. I'll buy you 10 new shirts. Just keep your eyes open and look at me." I looked at the clock on the dashboard. 2 o'clock in the morning. We had already traveled about 30 miles away from that den of criminals. I needed a hospital, but it couldn't be the big downtown hospital where there are cameras everywhere, and his in-laws could easily find us. I vaguely remembered there was a small clinic on the outskirts of the town of Stone Mountain, about 6 more miles. It was the only place I could think of. "We're almost there, my son. You'll see the doctor soon," I comforted him. But inside, anxiety was burning me up. I didn't know if I was walking my son into another trap. In this borderland, the line between good and evil is thin as paper. Police, doctors, judges, anyone can be one of them if the price is right. But seeing Marcus agonizing, I knew I had no other choice. I spun the wheel. The truck turned onto the dirt road that leads to Stone Mountain, kicking up a cloud of red dust. The Stone Mountain Clinic was an old, single-story building with peeling yellow paint, lost among eucalyptus trees. The white and blue neon light of the emergency room was the only welcome. I parked abruptly in front of the door. I didn't even turn off the engine. I jumped out, ran to the passenger side, opened the door, and carried Marcus. "Hold on, son. Just a little more." I carried him inside. A guard nurse, who was dozing behind the counter, woke up with a jump. When she saw us, an old man in torn, blood-soaked clothes and a beaten young man with a chain hanging from him, she screamed, startled. "My God, what happened here?" "Emergency. My son had an accident. Help him, please," I yelled, laying Marcus on the nearest gurney. A middle-aged on-duty doctor with thick glasses rushed out. He looked at the wound on Marcus's leg, then the chain, and his look changed from concern to suspicion. "This is not a traffic accident," he said coldly, touching the fracture. "These are blows from a blunt object. And this chain, who are you? What did you do to him? I am his father. I just rescued him from kidnappers. Can you heal his leg before you interrogate me?" I shouted at him. I had run out of patience. The doctor stared at me for a moment. Then he nodded to the nurse. "To the treatment room. Morphine for the pain. Now, call the police." "Don't call the local police. Call the FBI." I stopped the nurse's hand. The doctor pulled my hand away. "It's protocol, sir. We have to report any suspicious injury." They took Marcus inside. They left me in the waiting room. I let myself fall onto a cold plastic chair, grabbing my head with Blink's dried blood still on my fingernails. I took out my phone to call DC, but the battery was dead after a long night of flashlight use and GPS. Damn it to hell, I cursed, hitting the phone against the chair. Not 20 minutes passed before sirens were heard outside. Not an ambulance, a patrol car. 2 county sheriffs' patrol cars slammed to a halt at the entrance. 4 officers got out, hands on their holsters. The one in front was a fat man with a bushy mustache. His eyes narrowed, scanning everything. I stood up. Instinct told me something was wrong. They arrived too quickly. Too fast for how slow the police are around here. The sheriff came in. He didn't ask the doctor. He came straight to me. "Are you Elijah Vance?" he asked in a husky voice. "Yes. I want to report a crime. My son was... Shut your mouth." He cut me off rudely. "You are under arrest for kidnapping, disturbing the peace, and assault with a deadly weapon." "What?" I was stunned. "Are you crazy? I'm the victim. My son was broken by his wife's family. They had him chained up." The officer smiled mockingly, approaching me. He whispered in my ear, just for me to hear. "The Monroe family already called to warn us. Old man, you kicked the wrong beehive. Blink is my drinking buddy." My blood ran cold. It turned out the doctor's protocol had led me straight into the lion's mouth. Or worse, this whole town was on the criminal's payroll. "Cuff him," he ordered his subordinates. 2 young officers rushed toward me. I'm not a criminal, but I'm not a sheep to be led to the slaughter either. In that moment, the survival instinct took over. I grabbed the plastic chair, smashed it against the nearest officer, and ran toward the emergency room where Marcus was. "Marcus, lock the door!" I yelled. I ran into the emergency room, slammed the door shut, and slid the bolt just before the sheriff put his hand through. "Open the door, you crazy old man!" The pounding echoed, followed by curses. In the room, Marcus was on the bed, half drugged with morphine. But the noise woke him up. The nurse and doctor backed away, scared into the corner. "What the devil are you doing?" the doctor shouted. "Shut up and step back if you want to live." I pulled out my knife, not pointing it at them, but at the door. I'm not going to hurt anyone, but I'm not going to let those pigs take my son. I pushed the heavy medicine cabinet to block the entrance. The pounding outside indicated they were trying to break the door down. The wood vibrated, and pieces of drywall fell. "Pops?" Marcus tried to sit up. "What's going on?" "The police. They're Blink's people," I said quickly, sweating profusely. "They're coming to take us so your wife's family can finish us off." I looked around the dead-end room, windows barred. We were trapped in a mousetrap. I needed reinforcements, but my phone was dead. I turned to the trembling nurse. "Ma'am, lend me your phone, please. I swear on my father's honor that I am not a criminal. They want to kill my son." Maybe the desperation and truth in my eyes touched her. Or maybe she was afraid of the knife. Trembling, she took the phone from her scrubs and gave it to me. I grabbed it. My trembling fingers dialed the number I knew by heart but never thought I would use like this. DC's number. DC was my student in the self-defense school years ago. A rebellious orphan whom I straightened out. Now he's a DEA Special Forces commander in the capital. It rang once, twice. Thud, the door began to crack. The officer outside was hitting it with the butt of his weapon. "Hello?" A deep voice with authority answered. "DC, it's me, Coach Eloy," I yelled into the phone. "Coach, what's wrong? You sound..." "DC, listen closely. I'm at the Stone Mountain Clinic, Georgia. The local police have me surrounded. My son, Marcus, his wife's family, who are drug dealers, broke his leg. The cops here are bought off. If you don't come, I'll see you in the next life, son. Silence for a second. And then DC's voice became hard, professional. Barricade yourself in there, coach. Don't open up. Don't give anyone up. I'm sending the nearest quick reaction team. 30 minutes. Give me 30 minutes. I don't know if this door will last that long, son. Use everything you have. Don't die, coach. I'm on my way. He hung up. I threw the phone back to the nurse. 30 minutes. For someone waiting for death. 30 minutes is like 30 years. The pounding stopped. For a moment. They were probably looking for something stronger to take down the door, or planning how to get in. I returned to the bed. Marcus was a little more away from the medicine. He looked at me, no longer with the fear of the shed, but now with determination. Pops, he signaled to me, they're not going to leave us alone. If they come in, our word is worth nothing against their power. I know. DC is on his way, but we need proof to put those bastards in jail. Marcus pointed to his left foot, the healthy one that still had a dirty sneaker on. Take off my shoe. The left one. I frowned, but obeyed. I untied the laces and pulled off the mud-caked sneaker. Lift the insole, Wendell, he told me. I slipped my fingers underneath, lifted the insole, and there, in a small hollow carved into the heel, was something black and tiny. An SD memory card. I grabbed it, looking at it under the neon light. A piece of plastic that could mean life or death. What is this, son? The body camera, Marcus said, panting. That day, when I found them in the warehouse, I managed to get the card out of the camera I had on my vest. I hid it in my shoe just before my father-in-law knocked me out. I looked at my son with respect, on the verge of death, and he kept a clear head. What's on here? Everything, Pops. Blink and his father. Packing drugs. Talking about laundering money through my company. And when Bernard attacked me with the wrench, Marcus squeezed my hand. This is our weapon. Without this, we are victims. With this, we are the hunters. I gripped the card in my hand. Here it was. This would save us and send those devils to hell. Doctor? I turned to the crouching physician. Do you have a computer? A laptop? A tablet? Anything to read this? The doctor shook his head. No, there are only heart monitors here. Outside. The megaphone sounded, breaking the tension. Elijah Vance, this is the police. You have 3 minutes to open the door and surrender. If you don't, we are coming in with gas and lead. You are resisting arrest. Their patience was running out. They knew if this dragged on, their cover would be blown. They wanted to solve it quickly. Kill us or lock us up before dawn. I looked at the card, then at the vibrating door. Only 10 minutes had passed of DC's 30 minutes. I needed another weapon. A weapon they would fear, more than bullets. Ma'am, I looked at the young nurse. Does your phone connect to social media? Facebook, X? She nodded quickly. Yes. The 4G is slow, but it works. Open it. Record me. Go live right now. She hesitated, looked at the door, then at me. Maybe her ethics, or the pity of seeing us like this, overcame her fear. She turned on the camera and aimed it at me. It's live, she said, trembling. I took a deep breath, smoothed my white hair, and wiped the blood from my face. I didn't want to look like a madman. I wanted to look like a father. I looked directly into the lens, my eyes spitting fire. Hello, everyone. My name is Elijah. I am a father, and behind me is my son, Marcus. I stepped aside so the camera could see Marcus on the bed, with his leg shattered and purple, and the chain mark on his ankle. That image was more cruel and real than any speech. "Look at this," I cried, my voice cracking. "Look what his wife's family did to him. They broke his leg. They chained him up like a dog in a shed on Christmas Eve just because he discovered they were trafficking drugs." I held up the SD card in front of the camera. "And here is the proof. Here are the crimes of the Monroes and Blink. But guess what? The police are right outside. The sheriff of Stone Mountain is threatening to kill us instead of arresting the criminals." Outside, the pounding turned violent. "Knock the door down! Quick! What the hell is he doing?" Glass shattered. A tear gas canister rolled through the small window, spitting out white, stinging smoke. "Cough. Cough." I coughed. My eyes burned, but I didn't let go of the phone. "Share this video, please. If we die today, it was the Stone Mountain Police and the Monroe Cartel. Don't let this go unpunished. I am Elijah. I just want to save my son." Smoke filled the room. Marcus coughed hard, covering his mouth. "Cut it! Upload it now!" I yelled at the nurse. She hit end and publish. Just as she touched the screen, bang! The emergency room door fell down. The cabinet flew away. 4 officers with gas masks, batons, and tasers stormed in through the smoke. I stood in front of Marcus with the rusted bar in my hand. "Don't you dare touch my son!" I roared, like an old, cornered lion. A baton hit my shoulder, and I fell. An electric shock made me convulse, but as I fell to the cold floor, my vision blurred by the gas, I saw the nurse's phone screen light up. A small sign said, "Successfully published." And I smiled. The world knew now. They couldn't win this war in the darkness anymore. I lay on the cold floor, seeing everything blurry from the gas and the taser pain. The sheriff of Stone Mountain stood over me, his massive shadow falling like a tombstone. He raised his baton, his face red behind the mask, ready to deliver the final blow to this old father. "I told you, old man, I am the law here," he growled. I closed my eyes, trying to reach Marcus's bed. "Forgive me, son. I did what I could." Boom! A strong explosion, but not a bullet or a baton. It was the clinic's main door, blowing apart. Then military footsteps, metal clanking, and hard voices thundering like lightning, silencing the chaos in the room. "Federal law enforcement, drop your weapons on the floor, now." The sheriff froze, his baton in the air. He turned, and through the white smoke, I saw the most glorious scene of my life. A command unit, armed to the teeth, black uniforms with gold lettering. DEA task force entered like a flood. Automatic rifles pointed at the corrupt officers. Red lasers dancing on their chests. In the front, a tall man stood firm, pistol in hand, but with an eerie calm. He walked through the gas without flinching, his gaze locked on the sheriff. "DC, my boy. I'll say it once." DC's voice, cold, cut the silence. "Drop your weapons, or I'll treat you as cartel accomplices, and open fire." The sheriff trembled. He looked at his small pistol, then at the federal agent's arsenal. Clack! The baton fell to the floor. He raised his hands, his knees gave out, and he fell. "Don't shoot. I was just doing my duty," he stammered. "Your duty is to protect the people, not to guard murderers," DC said, and he signaled to his men. "Cuff them all. Take their badges and weapons. Call forensics now." The local cops were thrown to the floor, arms behind their backs. The sound of the handcuffs, click, click, sounded like music to my ears. DC ran to lift me. He took off his mask, worried. "Coach, are you all right? I got here too late." I coughed, pulling in clean air, crying from the gas. I squeezed DC's strong arm, smiling crookedly. No, son. Right on time. Right on time. I pointed to the bed. Marcus? Save Marcus. A military medic was already with Marcus, checking his vitals and giving him medication. He's stable, Coach, the medic reported. I sighed with relief. My body felt like a rag doll. I leaned against the wall, watching the corrupt cops being led away. Tonight, justice wasn't just a pretty word. Tonight, justice had the shape of black rifles pointing at the bad guys. My live video, just a few minutes long, became the spark that burned down the entire criminal empire. Within hours, it had millions of views. All of America was shocked. The image of the old father with a knife defending his chained son in the hospital touched the hearts of millions who thirsted for justice. The hashtags #HireJustice for Marcus and #BraveFatherVance flooded social media. Under brutal public pressure and direct orders from the Capitol, the raid on the Monroe Mansion was carried out at dawn. I wasn't there, but DC showed me the video from the agent's helmet camera. The gate I had torn down last night was still lying on the ground. The federal agents entered. They found Bernard and his wife burning papers in the fireplace. Blink was found whimpering on the couch with his leg poorly bandaged and a rifle nearby that he had planned to use. But the most important thing was in the garage. When they broke through the false concrete floor, they found a secret bunker. Inside, there were more than 50 bricks of heroin, pounds of crystal meth, and an arsenal. The luxurious house, the parties, everything built on blood and poison. And Serena. I saw her in the video. She didn't run or resist. She was sitting quietly in the kitchen, crying. As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked at the camera, eyes swollen and empty. Pops, forgive me. She moved her lips, even though she knew I wasn't there. Seeing that, I felt no pleasure. I felt sadness, a deep sorrow for how dirty money destroys people. She was a good girl until greed and cowardice swallowed her conscience. Marcus and I were taken to the military hospital in the Capitol for safety. We lived under guard for a week. They operated on Marcus's leg and put in screws. The doctor said he would walk again, but he would have a lifelong limp. No problem, Pops, Marcus smiled, tapping his cast. Better to walk with a limp than to walk on my knees before those bastards. I looked at my son. Pride overflowed in my chest. The weak son in the shed was dead. Standing before me was a real man who had crossed through hell and returned with a scar of honor. 3 months later, the trial against the Monroes. It was the trial of the century in Fulton County. The courtroom was packed with press, people, and activists. The Monroes hired the most expensive lawyers in the country, fine suits, expensive cologne, trying to turn the trial into a circus. Your Honor, said the lead attorney, slippery as a snake. My clients are victims of a setup. Marcus is an addict. He self-inflicted the injury for extortion. The drug was planted. There is no direct evidence linking my clients. He spoke eloquently, logically. I saw Marcus gripping his wheelchair, red with anger. Calm down, son. I put my hand on his shoulder. The truth is like a needle. And today, that needle is going to prick their throats. It was the prosecution's turn. DC took the stand and placed the sealed SD card, the one from the shoe, on the table. Your Honor, this is the irrefutable evidence, DC said. The large screen turned on. Everyone held their breath. The clear image from the body camera appeared. An angle from Marcus's chest. You could clearly see Bernard and Blink cutting the tires, stuffing the white packages. The audio was perfect. If this goes well, we're getting new cars, Pop, Blink was heard saying. Do it right. If Marcus finds out, we're in trouble, Bernard replied. Then Marcus enters, the shout, and the treacherous blow from behind. The camera spins and goes black. But the audio continues to record the blows and Marcus's groans. When it was over, total silence. No one moved. The cruelty exposed before the light of justice made even the sly lawyers lower their heads. Bernard sank into his chair, pale. Blink hung his head, trembling. The judge struck the gavel, sounding like a death knell for the empire of evil. "Call witness Elijah Vance." I stood up, adjusting my old but ironed shirt. I walked up, looking at the people who had tortured my son. "I don't know much about laws," I said, my voice resonating. "I'm just a father. I taught my son to plant, to raise livestock, to be righteous. I didn't teach him how to deal with devils, but I taught him one thing. If you fall, you get back up. And if you can't, I'll carry you." I pointed to Marcus in the chair. "They broke his leg, but they didn't break his spirit. And they will never break a father's love." The entire courtroom stood up and applauded. It thundered like a storm, drowning out the defense's complaints. The sentence was handed down that day. Bernard Monroe, 25 years. Blink Monroe, 30 years. His wife Serena, 15 years for complicity. Assets confiscated. Justice was done. After the trial, before being taken to the women's penitentiary, Serena asked to see Marcus. The police gave them 5 minutes in the waiting room. Supervised. I stayed by the door. Marcus was in his chair. Calm. Serena was across from him, handcuffed and crying, her mascara running. "Marcus, forgive me." She was sobbing on. "I was scared. Scared they would kill me. Scared they would kill you." Marcus looked at the woman he shared a bed with, the one who had sworn to love him. "I know you were scared, Marcus said softly. "I don't blame you for being afraid. Everyone fears death." "Then you forgive me? When I get out, we can—" Serena looked at him with foolish hope. Marcus slowly shook his head. "Serena, I forgive you. I don't hold a grudge. Because holding a grudge is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. I let it go so I can live in peace." He paused, his voice firm. "But forgiveness is not going back. You watched them break my leg. You were silent when your father hit me with the bat. That silence hurt more than the blows. I need a woman who will stand by my side in the storm, not one who hides behind the enemy." Marcus turned his chair without looking back. "Goodbye, Serena. I hope you find peace, but not with me." Serena burst into tears on the table. Tears of remorse that came too late. I pushed my son's chair out of the courthouse. The afternoon sun bathed us in gold. The spring wind was already blowing, bringing new life. "You did the right thing, son." I patted his shoulder. "It hurts, Pops." Marcus touched his chest. "It hurts more than my leg." "I know, but that wound will heal too. And when it heals, you will be stronger than ever." 3 months later, winter had passed, but it still gets chilly at night. Night on the ranch. In my old yard, a large bonfire was burning, red sparks flying to the sky like fireflies. The smell of smoked brisket, with its spicy rub and oak wood, filled the air. Marcus was by the fire, with a crutch in one hand, flipping the ribs on the grill with the other. He kept his promise. A delayed BBQ feast, but the most delicious in the world. "It's ready, old man. Bring out the booze," he shouted, his face red from the fire and the joy. The smile had returned. I took out the aged rye whiskey. I poured 2 shots. DC also came. He drove from the city just to be with us. 3 men sat by the fire under the stars. "To the return," DC said. "To justice," Marcus followed. "To being alive," I said, a lump in my throat. Bottoms up. The whiskey went down, burning nicely, warming the soul. I watched Marcus eat the meat with gusto. I looked at his cast and then up at the sky. I remembered that terrifying Christmas Eve, the despair of seeing my son chained, the sleek-tude against a rotten system. If I hadn't trusted my gut feeling, if I had backed down out of fear, if I had chosen the security of old age instead of the danger, I would now be alone in front of my son's picture, eating myself up with guilt until I died. I turned, looking into the camera, as if speaking to millions of fathers out there. Friends, life is full of traps and wolves in sheep's clothing. They can take your money, your home, even your good name, but there is one thing they can never take from you, and that is the blood that runs in your family. Never ignore the voice of your heart. When your spirit tells you your children are in danger, throw out the fear, break down the doors, fight like beasts to protect them. Because a man's greatest wealth is not what he has in the bank, but the people sitting around the fire tonight. I am Elijah Vance. I am a father, and I am proud to be one. I put down the glass and grabbed the piece of brisket Marcus handed me. This is delicious, son. Better than a 5-star restaurant. Merry Christmas, Pops, Marcus laughed, his eyes shining. Merry Christmas, my son. The fire crackled, illuminating the happy faces of a father and son. Tonight, the wind is still cold, but our hearts have never been so warm. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch next.